Hey guys, it's Bree. Thanks for checking in. I hope you're doing well today. Today I'm making a video that I didn't know if I ever would make, and that kind of scares me to make, but I thought it could be helpful for others, so here I am. And today we are talking about all the medications I've tried and had bad experiences with. I want to put a huge disclaimer that every experience I had is unique to myself. Every single body will react differently to each medication I'm about to talk about. In fact, a lot of the medications I am talking about have worked wonders for friends of mine and other people out in the world. So please take it with a grain of salt, and I hope this can be helpful in your journey and a little bit of an education about each one. So yeah, let's get started. The first one I'm going to talk about is Lexapro. It's also known as escitalopram. This is the beginning medication for a lot of people. This is the one that is most well tolerated and praised by so many psychiatrists and doctors as a really good antidepressant, and it's also good for anxiety, and that's true. It's good. It's done wonders for a lot of my friends actually. Lexapro is an SSRI, which stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It is used often in place of older antidepressants because of the side effect profile. It generally doesn't cause as severe or as many side effects as older antidepressants, and that's why it's used so often. So I was put on this at 5 milligrams, and that is the lowest dose. It is like a microdose, and I didn't tolerate it well. I was only on it for a day because I had kind of an extreme reaction. Again, want to say this has worked for so many people, and I don't think you should be scared of it. This is just my experience, but I took this medication, and maybe within 30 minutes or so, I can't remember the exact timeline, I felt wired. I couldn't sit down. I was pacing around the house. I felt kind of itchy under my skin, which makes me feel like it was kind of probably an allergic reaction, but I just couldn't sit still. My anxiety was sky high. I couldn't think right, and I just had all of this energy but no way to focus it or channel it. It was as if I had drank 10 cups of coffee, which I don't tolerate caffeine well, so that was not very fun for me. After that, I didn't feel inclined to take another dose. I'm sure if I had continued taking it, it probably would have gotten better, but I think that was a pretty clear indication it wasn't the medication for me, so I quit it because I had only been taking it for one day. The reaction I had is actually unusual for Lexapro. I have heard and seen that a lot of people feel drowsy and lethargic from Lexapro, so they end up taking it later in the night, and they sleep well on it, and it does wonders for their depression, and it's great for their anxiety. So I definitely had an opposite reaction, which is a common theme for me. But again, I don't think you should be afraid of the medication if it's prescribed to you. I think you should give it a shot. The next medication I'm going to talk about is Remeron, which is also called Mirtazapine. This is not a common antidepressant prescribed to people my age. It's the most sedating medication, and it's actually an atypical antidepressant. So it doesn't fall in other classes. It's kind of in a class all of its own. This medication I was on for about a month, so I actually tolerated it okay, and it did do some good things for me. It helped me sleep. The first night I took it, I slept for I think like 13 hours, and it was a deep, heavy sleep. And the next day I actually felt good, because I think it was the first time I'd had a good, restful, deep sleep in a really long time, because my anxiety had robbed me of that for so long. I am grateful that it did that for me. It also helped me a lot with my appetite. At that point, I had lost a lot of weight because of my anxiety. I was having such a hard time getting food down. I could keep it down once it was in there. I never wanted to eat. There was so much adrenaline in me at all times of the day, and I didn't want to even look at food, which if you know me personally, you know that is like a huge red flag that there's something wrong, because I love to eat. So it gave me my appetite back. It made me sleep, which I am happy about, and I think that's why I tolerated it for as long as I did, but it wasn't relieving my depression. And I guess in a way it was relieving my anxiety, but in a sense that I was kind of numbed out and just felt really dull. So I didn't really care enough to be anxious. Like, it was just not computing. At this point, I got a gene site test because my nurse practitioner at the time was like, okay, I don't know what's going on, let's figure this out. And I found out that Mirtazapine was in my red category, which means I have significant gene reaction. And at this point of taking it, I was a zombie. Like, I had the worst derealization I had ever experienced. That's actually when I found out what derealization was, because it was so odd to me how I was feeling. I thought that I was actually like going into psychosis, and that was really scary. But derealization is a symptom of anxiety, often experienced by people who have experienced trauma, especially in complex PTSD. But this Mirtazapine amped it up. One day I was driving back from Panera, and I knew where I was in my mind, but nothing looked familiar, and that freaked me out because it was the first time it had ever happened to me. And at that point I had kind of just written off Mirtazapine because I was like, what the heck? And then I got the gene site test, and at that point my nurse practitioner decided to take me off of that and put me straight onto Wellbutrin. Now, this medication is why I have put off making this video. It is difficult for me to talk about this. It was a traumatic experience, and I haven't fully processed what happened, so bear with me. I want to put another disclaimer that Wellbutrin has done amazing things for people. It has helped people quit smoking. It's helped them come out of, year-long depression. It's great as an add-on for SSRIs to help with side effects that aren't so fun to deal with. It's a good medication, and they wouldn't prescribe it if it didn't help people, I just had this reaction, and it's a very rare reaction, so let's get into it. The first night I took Wellbutrin, my body felt weird. I came directly off Mirtazapine. I was never weaned off of it. It was no Mirtazapine and onto Wellbutrin, so it felt like my body was searching for something, and then it was confused that there was a new thing in it that wasn't Mirtazapine. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling. If you have, let me know, because it's hard to explain. But first morning I took it, I felt a little off. I figured it was just the anxiety of taking the medication. It's never easy for me to start a medication, so I wrote it off, and I was like, you just need to get used to it. That night I got into an argument with my dad, which was unusual because it was over something small, so small that I don't even remember what it was, but I just remember feeling angry. I was mad, and I was just like, just stop talking to me, stop talking, I don't want to talk to anybody. And then a couple days later, the next night after I had taken the Wellbutrin in the morning, so that following evening, I was still agitated and just irritable, more so than my anxiety ever made me feel. And I went to bed that night, and I went to take a different medication that I'll talk about in a second. I'd like to put a trigger warning now. There will be talks of suicidal ideation and self-harm, and I will put a timestamp when that conversation ends, so you can skip forward. If it is triggering for you, please do not watch this part. I went to take this medication, and I looked at the bottle, and a voice in my head that didn't feel like my own said, put them all in your mouth. And that was scary to me, and I felt overwhelmed. I should have at that point talked to my parents. I should have talked to the nurse practitioner I was talking to, because I knew something was wrong, but I wanted this medication to work because I was so tired of feeling the way I felt, and I was tired of trying different medications. So I kept taking it, and by day 6, I was having thoughts that were not good. They were thoughts about ending my own existence, ending my own life, and they weren't my own. I didn't know where they came from, and I was scared to tell my parents. That's who I was living with at the time while I was trying to sort out medication and my mental health. I was staying with them for a bit, and I was scared to tell them because I thought that I had broken my brain. I thought that there was no coming back from it, and that if I told them the thoughts I was having, they would never look at me the same. And I overcame that because I was scared. I couldn't hold it for myself. I finally told them, and they were understanding. They supported me through it, and they helped me feel as safe as I could at that time. Getting through that day and night of that dose of Wellbutrin having been built up in my system for almost a week was probably the hardest day and night I had ever had and have ever had. And I just kept saying that I thought I had broken my brain, and I was scared, and I didn't know how to overcome it, and I was scared that it was going to be this way forever. Okay. Sorry, I actually just got a phone call at a good time because I think I needed to take a minute to walk away. So I am back and I will continue. Wellbutrin was really scary for me, and I had a reaction that only 2% of people who take antidepressants experience, and that is the onset of suicidal ideation. This is a very, very uncommon reaction. And since I had this reaction, Wellbutrin has been placed on my allergens, or my allergy list, as a medicine that I am definitely allergic to. That way it will never be prescribed to me or administered to me again. I want to reiterate that this medication works wonders for people. It has helped people I know get out of their depression. It's helped people stop smoking. It's helped curb cravings for especially nicotine, and I think it's a good medication, and it wouldn't be prescribed if it didn't help people. I just was unfortunate enough to have a very scary reaction, and I am telling this story just so people know there are warning signs for this kind of thing. My warning sign was that initial thought in my head that didn't feel like my own. And at that point, I should have talked to my doctor and talked to my support system. But I wanted that medication to work so badly for me that I kept going. And I now know that that's not the right thing to do. And there are some side effects that lessen with time, and they get better as you take them, but that's not one that any doctor wants you to wait out. So please know that if you're having weird thoughts after starting a medication, you are not expected to ride those out. Those are things that need to be brought up immediately before they worsen. I also want you to know that I got through that. I was convinced my brain was broken. After the Wellbutrin left my system, I was back to my, not great base level of anxiety and depression, but I was no longer having those thoughts. I wasn't contemplating anything, and I didn't feel like my brain was fried. I don't want to end on Wellbutrin, so I want to talk about this last medication called Hydroxyzine. This is another common one prescribed to people in place of benzodiazepine. So if you have anxiety, you probably have been prescribed this, or you might get suggested this. And what it is a antihistamine, so it's basically like a really strong Benadryl, and it's used as needed for anxiety. So if you're having an anxiety attack, you're having a panic attack, the idea is to take one of these and it'll calm your system. I've tried these a few times. They're okay. It makes some people less anxious. For me, it didn't make me less anxious as much as it just made me too tired to care. I was still anxious, and I knew I was anxious, but my body was so tired that I was like, whatever. However, Hydroxyzine helped me through the Wellbutrin fiasco because it helped calm me down to the point where I could get a little bit of sleep and sleep off that bad experience. Also, I want to explain, if you have a reaction of suicidal ideation, please go to the hospital. The only reason I didn't is because I had 24/7 monitoring because of my parents. They were on me. They took away all my medications, and at my request, they stored all my medications in a spot that I didn't know about, and they kept an eye on me. Again, I didn't have a plan, but it was still scary. So if you have that experience and you don't have someone to monitor you like that, go to the emergency room. It's okay. They're not gonna lock you away. They're just gonna make sure that they monitor you until they get that medicine out of your system. Be safe, please. Always set up a support system when you're starting medication. That way people know to check on you. These things are rare, but they happen, so just be careful. To finish up the hydroxyzine, it just makes me super sleepy and spacey. I will only take it at night. It makes me groggy the next day too, but it's helped me on sleepless nights, so I'm grateful for it. It's not habit forming like benzodiazepines, which benzos help for other people. Personally, I don't like benzos. I don't like how they make me feel. So hydroxyzines were the option for me. Now I'm on Prestige and Buspar. I'm waiting to see how they do for me, but I've been tolerating both pretty well so far, and they've been fine. I'll be adding propanol to my stack as an as needed. That shouldn't make me drowsy, so that's why that's being added instead of the hydroxyzine. And if you are curious about that, I post updates almost weekly on my channel about how that journey is going, so subscribe and check out those other videos. I really hope this has been informative and helpful. I do hope that this doesn't deter anyone from starting medication or trying medication. It's a long process and it can be tedious, scary, and annoying, but medicines help people, so it might be worth it. And the only time you'll ever know is if you try it. Thank you for watching this video, and if you've made it to the end, cool, thanks. I'll see you guys in the next video.